A new directive from the governor as we see the number of COVID cases continue to rise.
Plus, as we see cases spike, districts discuss fall classes in Great Falls.
And later with agriculture, our #1 industry, a look at the disruptions from this pandemic.
From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 530 News.
Well, even with the governor's new order this afternoon, some stores in Great Falls are taking mask mandates into their own hands. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tim McGonigal.
And I'm Hallie Schwinnard. We certainly have a lot to get to tonight, including reopening Great Falls public schools in August. From mask requirements to time in between classes and cleaning requirements. We'll have much more on that in just a moment.
But first tonight, take a look at this map. The highlighted areas indicate places with more than 4 active cases, meaning you need to wear a mask in public. MTN's Mike Dennison has more on the governor's newest order.
Well, it's official. From now on, masks will be required in public places and counties in Montana that have 4 or more active cases of COVID-19. Governor Bullock made that announcement today at the Capitol, saying that the voluntary efforts were not enough. The cases were rising too much, too fast. He wanted to take this step to try to get things back in control as they were 2 months ago before we entered phase 2. It was also asked whether people had a constitutional right not to wear a mask. Governor Bullock replied that you have a constitutional right to make yourself sick, but you don't have the same right to make others sick. Governor Bullock also announced that he's making available $75 million in COVID-19 money to help schools reopen this fall, to help them pay for those mitigation measures that are going to be needed as schools hope to bring students back to the classroom in the coming months. Reporting from the Capitol, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
The governor's order comes as Montana breaks another 24-hour record for cases. The state added at least 145 new cases since Tuesday. Gallatin County saw the sharpest increase with 72 new cases. Active hospitalizations also spiked to 37 individuals.
As coronavirus continues to spread, some local governments are requiring masks be worn in public at all times. Now, some large companies are doing the same for their stores. MTN's Isaiah Dunk takes a look at the latest large business making masks mandatory.
On the same day that Governor Steve Bullock announced a mask mandate for the state of Montana, some of the state's larger businesses had already begun to take steps of their own. On Wednesday, Walmart announced that starting July 20th, masks would be required to shop inside. With 2 supercenters and a Sam's Club location in town, Walmart has a significant presence in Great Falls. The company said the policy is to maintain consistency across all its stores, as 65% of its locations are in areas where there was already a mask mandate. Before Wednesday, mask mandates in Montana were few and far between, but Great Falls customers were already taking heed of Walmart's policy.
I think it's important that we express and do proper health procedures to keep everyone safe. Personally, I have an immune deficient mom and I have a lot of friends who are immune deficient. And I just think that it's best that we all protect ourselves just until this virus takes its course. I think it's a smart thing to do.
For Sam's Club members specifically, masks will already be available at the door. This is far from the first time a large retailer has made such an announcement. Starbucks began implementing its policy this week, and Costco has had a mask rule since early May. Governor Bullock's directive only applies to counties with 4 or more active cases. Now, if Cascade County were to fall below that threshold, Walmart's policy would still apply. The company says that customers have been compliant in areas that already have mandates, and they expect that to continue elsewhere. In Great Falls, Isaiah Dunk, MTN News.
Right now, Great Falls public schools are talking about what the fall semester will look like. They're still going over a draft, meaning this has not been finalized yet, but the board has approved the draft, which will be made public tomorrow. The plan finalized will be on August 10th. Now, here's what it entails. The superintendent says they will be opening schools on August 26th, regardless of what phase the state is in. Districts will implement block schedules to reduce frequency of movement and allow time for cleaning. Teachers, students, and support staff will all be responsible for some level of cleaning to assist the custodial staff. No limit will be placed on how many students can be in the building at once, and the superintendent says masks will be required in most settings. We have a reporter at this meeting, and we'll have much more tonight at 10.
New today, the White House will now be the first to receive hospital data on coronavirus patients and not the CDC. Health and Human Services announced the change today. The data will not be available to the public either. It says the system that the CDC has been using to collect hospital data is, quote, an inadequate system today. Now that the information will be sent to the Trump administration. There are concerns about how transparent that data will be. Great Falls police are working on an active scene in the 1000 block of 7th Avenue North. A post to social media says several streets in the area are blocked and several residents have been asked to vacate their homes for their safety. Police say residents in that area may not be able to get to their homes for a while. GFPD declined to comment to MTN at this time. We will continue to update you as we learn more. Well, fire concerns continue to grow as we get warmer tomorrow, and our Storm Tracker weather team is here to tell us more. For the very latest, let's head on over to Grant Garland.
All right, well, thank you, Tim. Good evening, and good evening, everybody. And that is exactly right. We are looking at temperatures warming up tomorrow to the upper 80s, low 90s. And with how dry we've been, our concerns are growing. Currently, we're looking at 81 degrees here in the Electric City, a little bit warmer down towards Helena. Even if it is only a degree, it is warmer. 82, 76 in Lewistown, 81 in Glasgow, and 85 in Jordan. And with our winds, we're looking at sustained wind speeds of around 14 miles an hour here in the Electric City. And we're seeing around 10 miles an hour in Helena. Overall, what have we been looking at as far as our peak wind gusts? Almost 30 miles an hour in Cut Bank as well as Great Falls, and 25 in Helena, 31 in Havre. This is allowing for the drying of our grasses and especially the low elevations. That is giving some concerns for the National Weather Service. Over the last 3 hours, we have been looking at clouds staying off towards Glasgow. We are looking at clear skies for the most part as we head throughout the next 12 hours. By 9 p.m., 71 degrees with clear skies. Now we are looking at a cool down this weekend, but by how much? Well, we're going to talk about all that and more coming up in a little bit, but for now, back to you.
All right, thanks, Grant. We'll see you then. The first polling by national level firms for Montana's 2020 general election is out, and as one might expect, the top statewide races are looking pretty close at this point. Public Policy Polling, a firm that works primarily for Democratic candidates, says its poll shows Democratic Governor Steve Bullock with a 2-point lead over Republican Senator Steve Daines for the U.S. Senate seat. It also said Democrat Kathleen Williams and Republican Matt Rosendale are tied at 44% each in Montana's U.S. House race, and that Republican Greg Gianforte has a 4-point lead over Democrat Mike Cooney for governor. The poll of about 1,200 registered voters conducted late last week has a margin of error of 2.8%. One race, however, is not that close in Montana, according to the poll, the presidential contest. The PPP poll has President Trump leading Democrat Joe Biden by 51% to 42%. It said that 51% of Montanans approve of the job the president is doing.
Senator Steve Daines was in Great Falls today for a discussion on the state of agriculture in Montana and the coronavirus food assistance program. He and the USDA Undersecretary listened to Montanans discuss some of the challenges they have faced during this pandemic. For more on the senator's visit to Great Falls, here's Matt Holzaffel.
Senator Daines and Undersecretary Northey spent their morning listening to farmers, ranchers, and representatives from different organizations across Montana on a variety of topics, including the effectiveness of the Paycheck Protection Program, how the CFAP loans have affected Montana residents so far, and even what a second wave of the program might look like. After a tour of ag trucks and equipment, Daines and Northey headed down to Bumgarner Farm to hear how some Montana residents have been affected by the coronavirus pandemic.
Agriculture is our #1 industry in Montana, and that's why it was so important to have the Undersecretary of Agriculture come from Washington, D.C. to Montana. Literally, we're here on a wheat farm.
Roundtable attendees discussed topics ranging from disruptions in production.
We feed the world, but we found out in the last 2 or 3 months that we're struggling.
To meatpacking market manipulation.
If something isn't done from a legislative standpoint immediately, this entire cattle feeding industry and the cattle industry following it is going to change, and it's not going to be to the benefit of producers.
Senator Daines also talked about a potential second wave of funding for the coronavirus food assistance program, but wouldn't say if the relief amount would be another $19 billion.
I would anticipate that Congress will look at replenishing that fund, because when that package passed in March, it was based on a set of assumptions that this was going to probably be something that was more short-lived, maybe a few months. The number will be to be determined, but clearly I support putting more funds back into to that program, like we did with PPP.
Senator Daines ended the roundtable by saying that we know much more now about COVID-19 than we did originally back in March. He also added that without the agriculture industry, there is simply no economy in Montana. In Great Falls, Matt Holzaffel, MTN News.
The senator and the undersecretary also addressed topics like food security and how some farmers were left out of relief programs. Daines says he expects the next round of funding to be passed by early August, and he hopes that the additional funds will meet the needs of even more Montana farmers and ranchers.
Coming up, flights could soon be changing. An idea in Congress to ban airlines from selling middle seats until the pandemic ends. What you should know coming up next.
From Montana's news leader, you're watching the MTN 530 News.
Welcome back. The national coin shortage is affecting businesses of all shapes and sizes, though one Helena business that uses quarters more so than most said they're not feeling too much of an impact. Kevin Schulte is the owner of Little Dipper Laundromats and says they haven't felt that big of an impact from the shortage. Right now, Schulte says he has no intention of making any drastic changes, but if the shortage were to stick around for an extended amount of time, he would have to make changes, though they're not ones that he'd be thrilled about.
I've looked into two options. One is go into a token system. I don't really want to go down that route because then people have tokens that they can't use for anything else except for ours. The other option is go into a credit card system, which would use debit cards or credit cards. Again, I don't want to go to that. So our quarters are our best option, and we'd like to stay in quarters, but if a shortage happens, we'll have to make one of those two changes.
Federal Reserve officials say they're confident the coin shortage will be resolved once more of the economy opens and coins go back to being circulated as usual.
It is perhaps the biggest fear of airline travelers in this pandemic, getting on an airplane and finding a full flight with all the middle seats booked. Now, there is the question of whether that should be allowed at all, with a member of Congress set to introduce a bill to ban the sale of those seats. Our Joe St. George is in Washington with more.
Louisiana had one of the first virus outbreaks.
Cheryl Ann Blaine just took her first flight since the pandemic began. She's careful. Her mask is always on. In fact, she stayed away from her friends for 2 weeks ahead of today's flight to Reagan National.
We quarantined ourselves for 2 weeks before these flights.
Going into today, Cheryl Ann was nervous. Videos like this of packed flights are emerging around the country. She flew American Airlines, which is not blocking off middle seats. And while she tells us her flight today wasn't that crowded, the mere thought is worrisome.
I don't see why you should be selling middle seats.
In fact, American Airlines, United, Allegiant, Sun Country, and Spirit are all allowing middle seats to be sold and occupied on their aircrafts. Tonight, some are asking, should lawmakers step in and stop middle seats from being sold? After all, airlines have received billions of dollars in bailouts from taxpayers in recent months.
It has to make a difference when somebody is that close to you.
Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon is on board. He's sponsoring legislation to ban the sale of middle seats until this pandemic is over, after recently taking this full flight. The senator taking to heart what Dr. Anthony Fauci told a Senate panel recently about airlines selling those seats.
I mean, obviously that is something that is of concern.
Fauci's concern may be backed by a recent study. MIT found the odds of getting COVID-19 on a full flight is around 1 in 4,300. However, when middle seats are empty, the odds improve to 1 in 7,700. Delta and Southwest, they're blocking the sale of middle seats on their aircrafts, but that's only guaranteed through the end of September. And the CEO of Delta recently said he would be against any bans from Congress.
I'm not an advocate for adding regulation at this point.
So for now, remember to check airline policy before you fly, and maybe you'll get lucky and find an empty airport like Cheryl Ann.
It's like deserted.
At Reagan National, I'm Joe St. George.
Well, temperatures tonight dropping down to around 52 degrees in Havre and 48 in Lewistown. Don't go away. I'll have a look at your full 7-day forecast coming up after this break.
Storm Tracker weather starts now with Grant Garland.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you have had a great Wednesday. We are one day closer to Friday, and it has been a beautiful day for a lot of us here in the Treasure State. Now, today we did get up to around 82 degrees. The average is around 84, so right around that area. Around, though, back in 2007, we did reach 104-degree temperatures. The song of that year was Buy You a Drink by T-Pain. And yes, it is drink, not drink. Take a look at this. The Highwood Mountains out in the background looks beautiful with the cumulus clouds. Almost looks like Andy's playroom in Toy Story. Temperature is right there, 82 degrees on our cam. Winds are at 22 miles an hour with some gusts, so it feels a little bit cooler than typical at 80 degrees. That humidity, though, is only at 21%. Elsewhere, 76 in Lewistown, 81 in Glasgow. A lot warmer out towards Jordan at 85. And when we look at our sustained winds, I mean, we are looking at 15-mile-per-hour winds in Cutbank. Not really seeing, though, anything that really jumps out at me just yet. We are expecting, though, a windy afternoon on Friday, so that's going to that's not going to help out our fire situation too. So when we take in our warm temperatures as well as our winds, we're actually seeing 21% relative humidity on our chart. Not good. 18% down towards Bozeman. Let's see if we can see 12% down towards Billings. So very, very dry. The only good news I can say with this is that on Friday we are expecting a cold front that we're going to talk about that will help bring in some moisture to the area that we desperately need. Taking a look at our radar, we are looking at some clouds that have been making their way through Glasgow, just a few raindrops possible. Elsewhere, everybody has been staying dry with clouds, and this is all thanks to a high pressure that has made its way down towards Bozeman. And this has really influenced our entire area as it has been all week long. So as we go throughout the day tomorrow, will be the hottest day of the year so far. And typically we see our first 90-degree weather in like the middle to later part of August. We're seeing it tomorrow. On Friday, we're expecting a tad cooler temperatures with mostly sunny skies. And for this weekend, well, cooler than that. We're going to be looking at temperatures in the lower 80s, and we're going to see a slight chance for a shower. So high pressure does continue to take hold over our area over the next 24 to 36 hours before we start to see a low pressure off towards Calgary that starts to make its way towards Saskatchewan by Thursday evening. We're going to be looking at a cold front that will also start to progress down to the state as we look at a low pressure also develop. That will help bring in a few clouds as well as help bring in some moisture, which we desperately need for us. We aren't, though, expecting any rain for that, unfortunately. Going throughout the day tomorrow, our winds will gust to around 20 miles an hour right around 7 o'clock hour. But we aren't looking at really any higher wind gusts for that. We are expecting to stay dry. And as we take a look at our next 7 days, well, it's kind of going to be a roller coaster. We're going to drop down. We're going to drop down the hill to around 80 on Sunday before we go back on our next leg at around 91 on Wednesday. And as far as what we can expect for the following week after that, long-term forecast, we are expecting to stay dry, staying warmer. And we're actually seeing a trend with some drying coming back into play. So I expect the conditions we've seen today to continue as we head throughout the next couple of weeks. 52 degrees tonight in Havre, 51 in Great Falls, 48 in Lewistown rather. By tomorrow right around 1 p.m., 82 degrees. And we are looking at temperatures again warming up to 90 degrees. Tomorrow will be hot and balmy. By Sunday, 80 degrees with a 30% chance of scattered storms. Tim?
Coming up, play ball, even if it's the alternative variety. Details on a league that may be on its way to Big Sky Country.
From Montana's news leader, you're watching the MTN 530 News.
The Pioneer League baseball season might be canceled, but stadiums across the state are still getting plenty of use.
Tom Wiley joins us live from Centene with a look at a new type of competition. Hey, Tom.
Hey, thanks, Hallie. Here at Centene Stadium, you know, the Great Falls Voyagers would be about 20 games into the 2020 season right now, but of course, COVID had other ideas. We all know that, but fear not, baseball fans. Behind me, they have a kickball league. The Voyagers created it. It's going to be running every Monday and Wednesday through August, and coming up maybe next spring, there might be another form of baseball coming to Centene Stadium or another stadium around Great Falls and Montana. We spoke with the director of alternative baseball and learned more.
Georgia native Taylor Duncan was diagnosed with autism at the age of 4.
Had speech issues, sensory issues, and anxiety issues growing up.
The disorder prevented Duncan from playing his favorite sport at a competitive level.
But I still faced a lot of social stigma that kept me away from the game of baseball for the longest because of the constant perception I'd faced that one with autism was less capable than others.
So in 2016, he started the Alternative Baseball League, baseball for teens and adults with autism or other special needs.
It was time for me at the age of 20 to really give everyone another opportunity, not only to play the sport, but for social and physical skills enrichment they can take with them off the diamond as well.
What started with just one team and a handful of players now spans over 50 programs and 400 athletes spread across 21 states. But Duncan says the league is looking to expand, and one of the targets is Montana.
We want something ideally in every single area in the state of Montana. Now, does that all have to happen at one time? No, but the more coach managers we can find in those areas to help us start new programs, then we can get started in spring of 2021.
Right now, Alternative Baseball is on the hunt for coaches and general managers to help get the league off the ground. And if you're interested, Duncan has a pitch.
Look out, COVID-19. Here comes Alternative Baseball's movement to power through perceptions. And guess what, Montana? We want to come for you next. Let's make it happen, Captain.
Let's make it happen, Captain, indeed. Of course, if you're interested in alternative baseball, you can sign up to donate or volunteer your time as a coach, general manager, or umpire at alternativebaseball.org. And if you're just into watching some sports on a Wednesday night, you can come down to Centene Stadium. A kickball doubleheader starts here at 6 o'clock, and you might see some cool stuff like this. Check it out. Give it to me, Mike. Here we go. All right. Yeah!
All right, that's all the time we have for you at 5:30. Have a great night.